Welcome to another video in the ongoing series on DVOM usage. What we are going to demonstrate today is the manual range function of an auto ranging meter. So we've got another video on manually ranging meters, kind of how those things work, but we are going to look at manually ranging an auto ranging meter. Now you might say, why would you ever want to manually range an auto ranging meter? Well, the reason you would is because sometimes you might be looking at a voltage or perhaps a resistance value that is right between the different ranges. And that being the case, it might cause the meter to display some things in an irregular fashion. So you might be getting an OL popping up or something along those lines. So you want to manually range that meter to hold it in a range that can adequately display the reading that you're trying to capture. Okay, so what we'll do is we will take our leads and we'll hook them up to our battery here. So that we have a value to work with. Now you can see we have 12.51 volts on our battery. To manually range this meter, we have a range button, and that's what you'll always find on a DVOM. There's always a range button on an auto ranging meter to allow you to manually range. Now pay attention to this number here, the 12.51. Because that number is going to change, that number is going to fluctuate. But also on our little analog display down here, we'll watch that and see what that does too. So here we're in our auto range mode, because when you turn the meter on, that's the mode that it's going to display. When we push the range button once, all right, now we've manually ranged into what's typically called the 20 volt scale. So you'll notice nothing changed except for this range popped up in our display. I'm going to push it again. Okay, you'll notice the decimal point moved over to the right. This would be like a 200 volt range, somewhere in that neighborhood. The actual range values change. Now on our display, our analog display, you'll notice we just have two little bars, the 0 bar and then one other bar, because from here to here, all of a sudden that became a 200 volt scale. Okay, so it went from being a 20 volt scale to a 200 volt scale, or thereabouts. We're going to hit range again, and now we just have, it's fluctuating between 12 and 13 volts because we're actually 12.5, so it's rounding, not rounding. Our analog scale dropped down to nothing, so it's just showing 0. Now we're on what you might call the 600 volt scale. On the 600 volt scale, as it's usually called, this meter reads up to 600 volts. So it's somewhere in that neighborhood. But on this scale, we have no detail at all to the right of the decimal. There's nothing there. In fact, it doesn't even display the decimal. Because of course, when we're looking at something in the neighborhood of 600 volts, do we really care if it's 600.378? No, we don't. We just want to see what that high voltage number is. So we're going to push the range button again. Now we go back to the millivolt scale, and our meter starts beeping at us. And what it's telling us is we're in the wrong range. Okay, the meter can't read this voltage in millivolts because we're way over the top. Our analog scale is pegged. Okay, it's showing 40, which in this case actually refers to 0.4 volts or 400 millivolts. Well, we're well over 400 millivolts because we're at 12.5. So it's beeping at us, freaking out, saying we're in the wrong range. So we push the range button again. Okay, still freaking out. Now you'll notice that the V is not an MV. Back when we were on the millivolt scale, it was MV, but now we're just V. Okay, well this would be, I think on this meter it's probably a 4 volt scale. It might be a 2 volt scale. It's probably a 4 volt scale with 40 over here representing 4 volts on our analog scale. So still beeping at us. It's getting a little bit annoying. Let's range up again. Okay, now we've gone back to our our 20 volt scale, 30 volt scale, 40 volt scale, whatever they call it for this meter. And now it's given us a display. So everything's fine. Now how do we get out of the manual range function? Because as we go through manually ranging, all it ever says is range. Okay, the easiest thing to do is just turn it off, turn it back on. So you turn it off and turn it back on, range is gone. Now we're in auto range again. So that's how to manually range an auto ranging meter. It's a good thing to practice, and of course students here, if you are a student here and you're watching this video, this is something that you'll have to do at least once, on at least one assignment. So it doesn't hurt to brush up on this again. But just to kind of recap, when we hit the range button, we move that decimal point to the right, losing detail or losing accuracy to the right of the decimal as we go up to a higher range. If we're reading voltage that is higher than the range we've selected, it's going to say OL or something along those lines. And in case of this meter, it's going to beep at you. So that is how to manually range an auto ranging meter.